Well, unemployment, interest rates, and oil. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, if you got a question for me, I would love to take a few minutes and answer that question. All you have to do is go to prudentmoney.com. There is a link at the top of the page, and it says Ask Prudent Money. Just click through, and you'll submit your question, and we'll get you taken care of. It's all very simple, and that is there for you to take advantage of. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, you're probably thinking, where's Tony Joe? And Tony Joe's with me every Friday, typically, to talk about issues with your car, how to save money, and just everything that's car related. Back with Don Spear, who started Money Talk, and I eventually took the program over from him back in 1992. And this guy named Tony Joe was supposed to come along with me, and he would do the Car Corner edition every Friday. And been doing it I think maybe 2 or 3 years before I started, or maybe even a little bit longer than that. But what a blessing he has been, and a blessing that he is to so many people as far as saving money and diagnosing things. Catherine, my assistant, said, I've got to talk to Tony Joe about what's going on with my car. And so she calls Tony Joe. She goes, I don't know if you can diagnose this with me just telling you. And I said, that's what he does best. And but anyway, Tony Joe every once in a while will be in a situation at his shop where he can't get over here. I mean, think about it. He's in the thick of it throughout the day on a Friday, and he leaves and middle of the afternoon to come over and do the program with me. And of course, he works for free and gives of his time to what a ministry it is. So anyway, we're not going to be doing that today. There is a lot to cover, though. If you listened yesterday, I started kind of part one. Didn't realize it'd be a part one, part two, but I got to talking and fell off script, and got back on script and realized I had talked about all kinds of things that I didn't jot down, that I didn't take notes on, but I was thinking about, just hadn't organized those thoughts. Yesterday, I also talked about how every day during the financial crisis, which was Saturday, what am I talking about? It must be Friday. But it was 2008, and it was like every day there was a new problem. And, one of the things it taught me about management of money was in 2008, you really had to look for the clues, because just unbelievable things that set new precedent for all kinds of things, things we haven't seen before, all occurred, and it was just like every single day. And I remember saving my Wall Street journals from that really 1.5 year, 2 year time period of Lehman Brothers going down, going bankrupt, going out of business, and just the one big event after another. Now, I'm not trying to over sensationalize what's going on in the Middle East, but I will say this: that as every day comes and goes, the new information that's out, to me, the new unexpected information that's coming out that really, I think, has the White House completely baffled. Yeah, we're blowing people up and blowing things up and doing all that type of thing, but it's the unintended consequences of that happening. and the things that are happening that we didn't see coming. We're going to be talking about that today, and there's just not a good time. Well, we'll start out with this. There's not a good time to get the news that employment is running into a problem. You know, you really need about 250,000 to 300,000 jobs created every month to really produce a solid economic foundation and result in this economy. So this, this anemic 50,000 to 150,000 job creation, yeah, it's positive. Grateful for that. But at the same time, it's not enough to really move the needle. All it is, it created a stagnant environment. And that's what we've had. That's what we've dealt with. But today, those tables were turned, and you had economists that were predicting, forecasting how many jobs would be created, and it was an anemic amount, a number, but it was like 52,000 jobs estimated to be reported, forecasted. And that's not what happened at all. Our first big job loss, at least that the first one they're letting us in on, is a negative 92,000 jobs. We lost 92,000 jobs this past month. That's not what we want to hear. Especially don't want to hear that in the middle of this mess that's in the Middle East. So we have a real problem on our hands. A real problem that starts with interest rates, and you know how important interest rates are. We talk about it all the time. Being stretched to opposite ends of the planet. You've got a situation that we're clearly, well, I shouldn't say, no, I think clearly, I think it's safe to say clearly, heading for a recession. And why I can be so sure is that I don't believe in a second that this situation in the Middle East is going to come and go away. A lot of reasons for it. I've done a lot of research on this. I think that the situation is much bigger, and that's usually what ends up happening. But I definitely think, especially with what's happening as well, we're going to talk about that. But it is a mess, and unemployment taking its big first hit. You know, here's the other thing too. The jobs number would have been even worse if they would have factored in the birth-death ratio, or birth-death. I guess they call that a ratio. And it's based on how the Department of Labor estimates how many jobs are created or lost in a month that the report didn't catch. I've always been uncomfortable with the government estimating anything, because you fall into government accounting. So if you look at how many they estimated losing you or gaining, they put in there that out of that 92,000, there were 90,000 jobs added into that by the Department of Labor. If you don't believe that, count that another 90,000 jobs. So the truth is buried in there somewhere. So not a convenient time to get a unemployment report. And then we had a couple of situations today with President Trump saying that he wants an unconditional surrender. Only way out. Everybody, listen, Iran, lay down your guns, and that's the only way out of this thing. As if that's going to be an easy task, and to convince a country like Iran to just back off. Say, sure, hey, we'll back down. Don't think it's going to happen quite. I saw quite a few stories last night about the chances of something like that happening are so slim. And if that's what it's going to take, we may be here for a long time, which the price of oil, which just skyrocketed today, up over $90 a barrel. So you're going to have a real issue with inflation if this keeps going on. And we'll talk about, like I said, on the other side of the break. But you have inflation pulling us one way, recession pulling us another way, and interest rates they typically get raised when we have inflation, which would hurt the economy and a recession. And when we have economy and recession, we usually lower interest rates and cut interest rates, which would make the inflation rates go much higher. What a mess. And that'll be talked about next week during the Federal Reserve Board meeting. And expect quite a few fireworks from that happening. But that economic condition is called as stagflation. You can look to the 70s for that and how that happened. But this is not an easy situation, and I think as the days go by, the clues start adding up, and we need to be careful. We'll talk a little bit more about this on the other side of the break. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Before a spiritual awakening can sweep through society, Pastor Greg Laurie says a revival must sweep through the church. This week on A New Beginning, important thoughts on the role we can play in the renewal and how close we could be to the soon return of the Lord. Tune in this week for A New Beginning with Pastor Greg Laurie.
A New Beginning, weekday mornings at 7:30.
In 1 Corinthians, Paul reminds us to run the race of life to win the prize. Join me, Dr. Erwin Lutzer, for Running to Win. Be strengthened to finish your race with confidence.
Weekday mornings at 8 o'clock here on KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Got a question for me? Go to the website, prudentmoney.com. Up at the top of the page is a link, and you can click this as Ask Prudent Money. We'll just we'll take good care of you. Just send us a question, and we'll answer it for you. That's off the website. Also, while you're there at the website, find the email newsletter list. Make sure you sign up for that, and we'll keep you posted on what you need to know. Pretty simple stuff. Just all at the website, prudentmoney.com. So, I was just thinking about this. Last week, what were we talking about? We were talking about tariffs. We were talking about the Supreme Court coming down with their decision that it was unlawful, illegal, maybe illegal was probably a strong word, but President Trump acted without the ability to do so. He raised tariffs when he was there's nothing that says he could do that. Now there's some laws he took advantage of that says he can do it in certain situations. So he just went back and added a 15% global tariff to everyone, and there we are today. Haven't heard anything about that. And that in itself is a big news item, and I guess quite a bit's going on behind the scenes. I think we have to give back in tariffs something like $320 billion or something crazy like that. Anyway, but yeah, all that's still an issue, but not quite as big as this one. Now let's talk about the price of oil. The price of oil jumped this week 35%. 35%. Haven't seen that happen since 1983. It closed, I'm pretty sure, I didn't double check before I got on the air, but I'm pretty sure it was up over $90 a barrel. I mean, that's the thing about the price of oil. It can move as fast as unbelievably fast. Now, what most people are looking at are the obvious issues we're going to have with this. Inflation, that kind of thing. But that is, I came across an article in the Wall Street Journal, a very disturbing article in the Wall Street Journal. This starts off with, under the summary, Kuwait began cutting oil production at some fields due to full storage, signaling a broader regional storage crisis. The Gulf countries discussing bigger production cuts in the coming days. People familiar with the matter said major storage facilities in Saudi Arabia and the UAE are also filling up fast, with both countries expected to hit their limits in under 3 weeks. The storage crisis, which began with Iraq slashing output by more than half earlier this week, is compounding a cascading series of supply disruptions triggered by the conflict. And of course, you got the situation with the Strait of Hormuz that 20% of the world's oil comes through tankers, and that's pretty much just shut down. Beyond oil, you're also seeing that liquefied natural gas they're cutting the output of that as well. The sudden strangulation of Middle Eastern oil flows threatens to send shockwaves through the global economy. A sustained rise in oil prices would be a significant new drag on economic growth, triggering demand structure destruction and threatening to push countries into recession. Now, for consumers, it translates into an imminent spike at the gas pump, while businesses face rising operational costs. Now, I don't want anybody to walk away from the program today with the thought that, does he know anything positive or enlightening? That I do. I'm actually a very positive person. I do think that it is so crucial as a steward of what God gives us to look and see what's happening so we can make the right decisions and be the best steward we can. So I'm just giving you what you might be seeing, what you might not be seeing. But these storage issues, they can only store so much. And the price of oil during COVID, the storage was a dramatic problem during COVID. And I think that the contracts went as low as negative $50 a barrel or something like that. I don't think it was. It was a dramatic price move. So you've got all these issues that, I just don't think that we have seen the end of it. The other thing, I was talking to somebody today, and he was telling me that, my health insurance has gone way up. Now, half the government's shut down, or a good percent of the government shut down. Homeland Security is pretty much they're not getting paychecks. I guess they're still working. Yeah, they could be the most important agency that we need to be working in the United States when we're having a conflict with the Middle East. And yet, they're allowing them to go to the government to be shut down. When I say them, the politicians. Funny how it always kind of comes back to that. But anyway, the gentleman I was talking to today, said his health insurance went from $329 a month to $1,329 a month. $1,000 extra, and we're not talking about that. And there's a lot of things that we're not really talking about. So, there's a lot of, and I said this a long time ago, that it's going to come down to a situation where we go, wow, I did not see that coming. The unintended consequences. And I'll tell you, we've got from a Christian standpoint, we have got to be keeping the decision making of those who are in charge. We got to be praying for that. And I know that that's one of those things. Well, yeah, that's obvious. We really, really do need to be, and not forget how important that is, because there's a lot of moving parts. Just to think that one leader wants this and one leader wants that, and for that to happen, all these things have to fall into place, and it's kind of ridiculous to even when you contemplate it. So, what do you do from the standpoint of money, taking care of money, being a steward of what God has given you? Obviously, I keep getting buried in more and more information that I'm not getting to talk about. This happened yesterday, it's happening today, but there's just so much out there. But I want to introduce you to the concept, and we won't be able to get too far into it today, but we'll reconvene on Monday, and then I've got a dear special guest coming in on Tuesday to talk about her new book, and very much so looking forward to that. But on Monday we'll talk about correlated versus non-correlated investments. And I think this is such an important concept. And it takes a lot of it takes a lot of the things we talk about from the standpoint of managing risk. It takes a lot of this and makes it make sense. It does not go lost on me that a lot of this is not, some of this stuff that we talk about is not so easy to understand. And but it's important to know, right? So want to make sure that you do have a good idea of some things you can do to protect your investments, protect that which is given to you as responsibility, as stewardship responsibility. And we're going to be talking about that, and we'll spend a little bit of time catching up on the news. So it's going to be a long weekend, I'm sure. But lots going on, and just got to keep praying. This is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.